Welcome to The Difference. Today we revisit a conversation that we're having with my friend Jim Wild. Last week we talked about the way that God brought him together with his wife through all the tragedy in their life. And this week we get to hear the second chapter. So stay tuned.
You are listening to The Difference, a presentation from The Hour, a 54-year ministry. Steve, first we started on radio, then went to television, then we went streaming online. So at Our Stream, you can watch our programming from all those years. So it's at thehour.org. And now, here we are. Steve, last week was so cool, and like you said in the tease, I hope if you haven't heard what's going on in this progression of things, go back and listen to last week's program,
Yes.
watch last week's program, because this is an interesting, compelling story. It's a human story. It's a story that is just full of ups and downs. But one thing that really struck me with Jim's story last week was he was seeking for something after tragedy in his life and turmoil. He was seeking for a godly woman, and he was actively praying and seeking for that. And then Tony was actively seeking for a godly man and having people pray for her. And that act of being a seeker, sometimes you have to be looking for something to find it. I think there are a lot of times we think some things are just going to fall in our lap, but I think the prayers of the righteous availeth much. I think we are called to actively seek for
Exactly.
things.
I mean, Jesus made that claim: seek and ye shall find. I think sometimes we hear that and we don't really believe it.
Right.
If we're seeking in earnest and in the Spirit, and that, the story that Jim shared with us is just that story of seeking and finding, and of God being fingerprints all over it.
Yeah.
And so we want to
So we get to
reinvite.
continue that today.
Exactly,
Yeah.
Jim. We want to reinvite
Sure.
you back into the conversation and continue. Thank you for taking time, because I know, you and I have known each other long enough that when we tell stories, every time we tell, no matter how far away we are, it takes us back to those places and kind of
Sure.
digs into those emotions. And it's not always an easy journey to take as we're going through it. But the other thing that happens is it's almost like it continues the healing process. As you share this with those who are listening and watching, you are becoming a thread with your story with Tony that will find its way into their lives in some way, which just leaves you totally amazed and fascinated at the brilliance of God.
Yeah, absolutely, Steve. And thank you and Anthony for allowing me to tell mine and Tony's story. And you're so spot on that comment. And as you will hear in this second part today, again, the interwoven people and places and circumstances that continue to evolve over the course of our time together and our 25 years that we had together. So, as I said at the end of the last episode, we thought after we married in July of 2000, that would be happily ever after, right? And so, and life was good. It was very good. Tony's capacity for high impact exercise was limited because of her the way that her heart had been damaged. And of course, she was a cyclist and a runner before, and those things just weren't on the table for her at this stage of her life. But at the same time, she found ways to still remain active through tennis and a little bit of racquetball, and her determination was just so obvious that she wasn't going to be held back and she was going to live a full life, and it just might look a little bit different. And so, uh, it, as I watched her, I just continued to be in awe of how uh, positive she remained. She never complained. She just lived, and her faith grew. I think during this time we both were growing in our faith. We had started doing some mission projects together. We actually went on one with the group out of Petal. That is, I'm just drawing a blank on the name.
I don't,
But anyway, well, we went with them to Nicaragua, and it was a kind of an overarching medical mission, but just very general. Vitamins, giving pregnant women folic acid, and just seeing about people's well-being and health, making sure. But obviously, the real purpose was the personal side of ministry, meeting
right.
the people and being there beside them. And it was life changing for Tony, and it was also life changing for me, even though I had been on other mission trips to Mexico and Belize before. But then we took another step and we went to Antigua, Guatemala with a group called Faith in Practice,
Mm.
which was a surgical mission. And it was the first time in my life I ever got to go inside the OR with Tony
Oh,
and,
wow.
and just watch her work and how talented she was. Even, I'd always heard from my cousin who was an ENT and a plastics guy. Tony had often worked for him in odd days, and he told me one time, he said, she is absolutely the best surgical nurse I've ever worked with, that she has this ability to anticipate what his next move is and have the right instrument or the right, whatever it is that was going to happen. She's always a step ahead, and he said that's a sign of a really good OR nurse. But it was great. We built deep bonds, and our children were able to see us enjoy. And we always had said we wanted to take each of our children at the appropriate age on a mission trip, because we felt like that was better than any education you could get, is go and see how 95% of the world lives. And we're so blessed in our country and have so much that even in our country, the poor have more than most of the world has.
Exactly.
And so our first few years were just great. And we had the same types of challenges that every marriage has, and ups and downs. And obviously, managing the role of being a stepmom had its challenges, but I think Tony navigated all of those things extremely well, and just her incredible selflessness and her grace and her love just overcame a lot of the frictions
When you
that.
talk about her and you were talking about the surgery, the thing that I remember most about her is I don't think I've ever known a person who is more present in the moment of
Yes.
almost everything she did, which gave her that gift of being able to almost be so intuitive because she was so present and aware of what was going on around her. It would have been so easy for her to be so self-absorbed after
Yep.
everything she'd been through, after everything she suffered, but she was just with you in whatever she did.
Yep.
Any conversation, any project, she was all in.
She was, Steve, and it was just such a blessing and such a. It was just wonderful to be her partner and her soulmate because of that. I mean, it just she made life easy, and she made life easy for our children. And and you talk about presence. I never really ever saw her uh, give into any kind of self pity or any kind of uh, woe is me.
Mm.
sort of attitude or mentality. She just she got how to live in the moment. She really understood that better. And you know, we all have regrets in life, and I sometimes look back, and if I had a regret, there were times that she offered me, I think, really sage advice, and sometimes I would accept it, and other times I wouldn't. And I probably should have listened more than I did, because she would have saved me a lot of pain and grief.
That's why she favored the dog, like you said last
That's
week.
exactly right. And the dog got it. The
The
dog
dog,
got it well.
the dog
So
listened.
yeah, exactly. And so the dog definitely was a better listener than I. But you know, as we approached 2000 and four, I guess it was, we'd moved to Hattiesburg. I was in a new job. The kids had transitioned to new schools, and things were going really well. And you know, it was time to take William, who was the oldest, on a mission trip. And but at that point in time, I had just taken on this new role and didn't have the vacation time, and he was ready to go. And the window came and it shut. And by the time a couple of
Mm.
years later we were ready, he just didn't want to go. And I certainly regretted that happening. But when it came time for uh, Stephen at the time to reach that age and go on a mission trip, then it was 2008. And of course, Tony, when we looked at the trip, the dates, we signed up, we were ready to go, and then she reminded me. She said, "Do you realize that this is the the bookend of the week we're going on your family reunion, your family vacation at the beach every year?" And she said, "Jim, I can't come home on a Saturday afternoon, do everybody's laundry, repack for everyone, and turn around at midnight and go down to Jamaica. I just can't." She said, I'm not able to do that." And so it, I said, "Well, I want us to go as a family. We want to go together." And so I thought about it a few days, but there was this little still small voice that just compelled me, go, go. And I just verbalized that to Tony. I said, "Tony, I can't explain it, but there's something telling me to go." She says, "Hey, I honor that. You and Stephen go. Y'all go. I'll be at home. I'll help you get ready, but you know, I hope you understand." I do. I regret we can't go as a family, but I've just felt compelled to go. So
How old would Stephen have been?
Stephen would have been, this was probably 2000 though this was 2008. So Stephen would have been 14
Okay.
at the time,
Yeah.
14 going on 15. So we went, and it was a great mission trip. We actually worked in two areas. In the morning, we would go to a place called the Windsor Girls Home outside of Ocho Rios, and it was a place that where about 70 women who had been severely physically, sexually, emotionally abused lived. There's no safety net in Jamaica, and sadly, they had to have a fence around it, and predators would lurk around the fence. And when they saw people coming in, they would scatter into the woods. And but we would spend our mornings visiting with these women and painting and freshening up their rooms and their common areas and fixing things that needed to be fixed. And then in the afternoon, we would go by our bus up to the top of a mountain, and then we would hike up about a mile through the mountain, up a path, with shanties all down through the area where we were hiking to the top of this mountain. And there was a cinder block school in a field, and slowly and surely these kids would start coming out, and for long we'd have 70, 80 kids kicking soccer balls and you know, eating some of the local fruit picked off the tree called ginnups, and just having a big time.
Oh, wait a minute. Ginnups.
Ginnups.
Describe them.
Ginnups are like a grape, a hard-skinned grape that you crack open, and there's a piece of fruit that's
Kinda like
like
muscadines or
similar.
scuppernons or
Yeah,
something.
yeah, yeah. So, but it's a little bit more of a hard
Oh.
shell. But once you break it open, it has the meat of the inside like a grape.
Oh, wow.
And so it became a daily thing. The little boys knew that we loved the Ginnups, and they would come running, and they would have gone and picked them and have them waiting on us. And so, and then one of our kids would give a Bible lesson, and they would make something to take home, to hang on the, in their wherever they lived, and whether it was a little cross or whether some sort of little stained plastic thing to catch light. And but we had a great time, and so got home and it just sort of bask in the opportunity to spend a week with one of my children, and it was a life-changing experience for them, something they will always remember. But I fast forward a year, and then you'll really understand the meaning of that still small voice. When in 2009, Tony went into congestive heart failure suddenly. We didn't know that it had an end point, and that was grace that we didn't, even though Tony was in the medical field. And if she knew it, she protected me, and she didn't tell me. And I think that's probably the case. But she became very sick. It was Mother's Day weekend, and became very suddenly sick. And I think she was in denial, and I probably was in denial too. But when we finally realized what it was, I called her cardiologist, and he said, "Just meet me at the hospital early Monday morning. If she can't make it, go to the ER." Tony said, "Nope, I will make it, and we'll come in Monday." So we went in Monday, and he very quickly said, "Yeah, you're going to need a heart transplant." And I've never felt blown over like I felt in that moment, because those were words I just never anticipated hearing. And the fear, the fear of the unknown, the reality that she may get a heart, she may not. It was just a lot. And so while she was there, I took a little break and went out and cried, and tried to get my own emotions together, but at the same time knowing I have to be strong to support her. So
how did she handle the news?
Anthony, she was so sick, and I'll be real honest, she didn't even remember the trip down.
Gotcha.
And
yeah.
She was very weak, very sick, and they said, "We can either send you by ambulance, or you can take her and go now." And so I said, "I will take her, and we will go."
Yeah.
And I even called Mississippi Highway Patrol, Louisiana Highway Patrol, and said, "Hey, here's my license. I'm driving fast. Here's why. Please don't stop me." And so we got down there quickly, and they began to treat her pretty intensively with drugs and other things. And the first morning after we got there that afternoon, I was praying over Tony, and we were just praying together. And our nurse walked in, and I said, "Well, I was just going to pray with my wife. Would you like to join us?" And she said, "Sure." And I said, "I'm Jim, and this is Tony." She said, "Hi, my name is Teresa Green. I'm going to be your nurse today." So we joined hands and we prayed. And when we finished praying, Teresa said, "Well, my husband is a prayer warrior. Do you mind if I ask him to pray today and going forward for Tony?" And I said, "Absolutely not. We would welcome that prayer support, and we need that prayer support." And as she talked, I realized she was not from the West Bank or anywhere near New Orleans. She had an accent that I knew was from the Caribbean. And so later that day, as things calmed down a little bit and Tony got settled and a little more comfortable, Teresa came in and I said, "Well, Teresa, where are you from? You're not from New Orleans." She says, "No," and she smiled. She says, I'm from Jamaica." I said, "No kidding." I said, "Well, last year I took our youngest child and we went to Jamaica on a mission trip." She says, "Oh, did you? Where did you go?" I said, "Oh, it's a little bitty town. You made, it's a little place called Steertown." She says, "Oh, that's right near where I lived." And I said, "Really?" She said, "What did you do?" And I said, "Well, we worked at the Windsor Girls Home." She says, "I know exactly where that is." And I said, then in the afternoons we'd hike up the mountain. We'd go to a school and up right above that area, and we would have basically Bible school for 70 or 80 kids. And I said, "Matter of fact, I have pictures." And I pulled up my computer and I opened up the laptop and I showed her the pictures of the school, and she started crying. Tears started. She said, "That was my school when I was a little girl." And I went,
Wow.
wow. You can't make this stuff up.
No.
And so here we are a year later, and the person taking care of Tony was Teresa Green from Jamaica. And then I understood the still small voice. And Teresa and I are still friends. She and Tony maintained a relationship till the day Tony died. And
Wow.
she's been a part of our journey. So, yeah. So, at that point, it was, Tony was in the hospital about 2.5 weeks, and they basically said, "You can either go home," they said, "or you can stay in the hospital," and Tony wanted to go home. So they put a pump on her to keep medication flowing. But it was very apparent just how weak she was. She could not walk from the den to the bathroom without help. Her condition was pretty dire, and they listed her on the National Registry for Heart, and this was just prior to Memorial Day weekend. And we were home for literally 1 week, and they had told us, "Be prepared, because if a heart becomes available, we will call you, and you need to be here within 2 hours." And usually we call 3 people because every situation is unique, and from a medical perspective, you have to have the right antibodies to match the heart. Size is also a consideration. And so when we left, Tony just looked at me. She said, "Well, this is what I want to pray." I said, "What's that?" She says, "I want to pray just for the perfect heart at the perfect time, and that's in God's hands." And I said, "Well, Tony, that's exactly what we'll pray, and we'll yield to God's will for you, and we will, yeah."
What a prayer. I mean, if you could pray one prayer, we could pray that every day. The perfect heart at the perfect time.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And so it was literally 1 week, and it was at 11:51, and we'd just gotten into bed, and my phone rang, and it was Oster. And we both looked at one another, and we had bags already ready, and we both started crying, and we were crying tears of joy for the fact that maybe she was going to get a new heart, but she also, and I through her, knew what that meant, that somewhere somebody else was saying goodbye to their loved one. And that full circle moment was just something incredibly, incredibly powerful. And, before we left, she wanted to, the kids both were not there at that point. They were out, and she wanted to be sure to tell both of them goodbye. And she wasn't sure whether, this would be it or whether she would come home and see everybody again. And so we left and got to Oster, and they prepped her and did all of the different things that you do in that situation for all three of those people. And the next morning, about 10 o'clock, they came in and said, "Well, Tony, today's your lucky day.
Wow.
And are you ready?" She said, "I'm ready." And so, lo and behold, Teresa Green was the one who came and got her to take her to surgery. And the
Wow.
last person to see her, and Tony told me, she said Teresa stopped her in the little hallway going into the OR, and she prayed over her. And then she sang her a hymn. And that was the last thing Tony received before going through the heart transplant. So, once again, as we talked earlier about the strands of beautiful, pieces that make up the fabric of life, and all those people and the meaningful relationships, and how God places all of those people at points in time. Teresa Green was one of those key people that we are forever grateful to for just what she did for us. And
But that openness on your part of having a conversation, where are you from? A simple question
Sure.
leads to this connection.
right,
Because that unasked question and that connection would not have been made. And
Right.
then you would have missed out on what a blessing that was.
sure,
And that moment for her and her connecting with Tony right before going in, again, going back to, I think there is a call for us to, the solution for most things in life is some kind of action. And that might be an action of waiting and praying, but a lot of times it's an action of, I feel compelled to say something to that person, or I feel compelled to offer something to this person, or put myself out there. And without us doing that, how many times do we miss out on this overflow of blessing or connection
sure.
or interwovenness, and we miss out on it because we don't put ourselves out there? And I think that's a powerful message in us being able to just step out of that boat a little bit sometimes.
When I talk to people about the Lord's Prayer, one of the things I say, when we pray thy kingdom come, it's not just heaven come down. It is this sense that in my everyday life, let me be a part of that kingdom coming.
Absolutely.
And when we
Yeah.
have those interactions, those moments feel holy because they are holy kingdom coming into our existence, into our relationships, into our lives.
Well, and talking about being in tune and living in the moment, how many times do we all have that little inner voice that tells us, hey, call this person, or you think of something or somebody and you don't act upon it? And how many times have you found out after the fact that things happened and you wish you had made that effort? So,
And
Or
how many
you rob
times do
someone
you-
else from a blessing.
Yeah. Or how many
Yes.
times have you made the call and said, how did you know?
yes,
How did you know?
yes, absolutely.
So, all right, Steve, looking at our time, Jim has agreed to come back next week. There is more to this story. I mean, the further
it's
we
so
get,
remarkable, you can't compact it in just 2 podcasts.
and I like the fact that he's taking his time to tell us this. Again, this interwoven tapestry of people that God put in his path, but then the path of Jim and Tony becoming that catalyst for these other intersections.
Exactly.
We're all part of this, and when we have received then we realize that then we've become the giver as well. And
it's affected us.
and we're going to continue that next week. It's going to be a good.
You and I talk all the time about some of our favorite movies and stories are the Tolkiens and the Star Wars, who take the time to lay out the story.
Right.
And to let you walk around in it and feel the characters and get to know the people. And when Jim was telling his story, it was just, I wanted to hear more. It didn't just keep telling me this story.
Well, luckily we're going to get to hear more next week.
So we hope you'll stay tuned and listen to episode 3 of our podcast with Jim. And as always, hey, live loved.
You've been listening to The Difference, a presentation of The Hour. The Difference is made in conjunction with and partnership with the Institute for Southern Storytelling at Mississippi College. To find out more about the Institute and ways that we are partnering and mentoring young lives through storytelling, filmmaking, and more, visit us at southernstorytelling.mc.edu. And for more resources from The Hour and from The Difference, check us out at our Hour Stream platform with the streaming content at thehour.org. I'm Anthony Thaxton. Thanks for joining us.